15 years ago, the scariest thing in the indie horror scene was a geriatric bald man who would send you on your way to collect literal pieces of paper, and then he would jump scare you. Say what you will about anything, that is what an opinion is, but you gotta admit, indie horror within the last 15 years has been insane. Every indie horror game that has gone big went big, no matter the fall off. From Hello Neighbor to FNAF to Garten of Banban, all of these games have a community full of people who love and adore them, and I think that's really interesting. But there's one thing that I never understand. There is only one definitive Mascot horror, and anything that tries to resemble or nearly come close to it is deemed bad, a failure, or not good enough. From collecting paper, to collecting batteries, to collecting bad paychecks, indie horror was obscenely simple back in the day. The reason why I think FNAF thrived as much as it did is because it was an original concept of something so simple yet so terrifying. You sit in a room, turn left to right, and stuff shows up and attacks you. But, for its time, it was inventive, creative, and phenomenal. And I'm not saying Five Nights at Freddy's isn't any of those things today. We're on the 11th game, and I'm waiting, Steel Wool, send me a copy. It genuinely just comes from a place that when it comes to any sort of media nowadays, I'm so burnt out, and I'm so sick of everything having to relate to something else, and if it doesn't, it's never as good as said something else. When you look on the catalog for PlayStation for top horror games, these are what you see. These are all completely different games from each other, yet they all follow the same motif. And I think what drives me crazy is that I listen and I watch all these communities fall apart and I watch all these things get torn apart because it has to be like this. I can't enjoy this because I enjoy this too much. And I can't enjoy this because that's too similar to this. What a weird way to live life. So I'll be the one to come front and say it once and for all. Poppy Playtime is peak. Yep, this is a Poppy Playtime retrospective. Share this video. I'm working very hard on it, and I'm quite late to making it, but here we are. I mean this with full sincerity when I say this. I'm not going to be dogging other games or even dogging Poppy Playtime when I talk about this game. I'm giving you my genuine opinion, and I'm finally coming forth and saying why I like this game, because I'm so sick of people telling me this game is garbage, childish, or cartoonish. And yes, you are allowed to have your own opinion. This is mine. Enjoy. The first thing I kind of really want to just go into and sort of yap about for the intro is how much freaking charm this game has. Aside from an actual ARG that this game had for 2 chapters worth of gameplay, which really was 2-3 years worth of content that you kind of just went in and looked for, they put so much effort into everything in this game for no reason. Like the sheer fact that the clip I'm showing you, they built a Mommy Longlegs toy, and all of those shirts that those kids were wearing were actual Poppy Playtime shirts. Like, they developed that before the chapter even came out. And it's little attention to detail that Poppy Playtime has that kind of makes me smile a bit in a terrible way. Like, they put so much effort to the point of hiding toolboxes around the world with a distinct location in a Discord server, and you go and find them, and when you open it, there's a secret to the next chapter. Footage not found, by the way. I can't find it to put it there. Like, even their gratuitous cameos got done up for the game's accuracy and lore. Speaking of gratuitous, Mob. I am an aspiring voice actor. My email is in my About section. Hit me up. Even the first VHS tape kind of just lays the groundwork of how legit this franchise seems and how it actually feels like it can exist in our world, because it feels of its time, it feels of the era, and it feels legit. It's like, oh, this is a market for children, and that's a genuine, like, Toys R Us. To me, Playtime Co. feels more legit as a company and as a business more than any local pizza place, if that makes sense. Playtime Co. feels legit. It feels accurate. It feels real. The business, the corporation, the workers, the way it's laid out, the secret, whatever is inside, that all feels actually realistic to me, and I don't know how I could explain that to you. Just think of like a Jelly Belly factory or the Wonka factory, and you're like, oh, that's a little sketchy. It feels like a play on that. And the fact that that realistic and cozy feeling adds to the actual creepiness and scare factor in the lore is actually genius. Playtime Co. is a trap for children. It is a place where your child will become orphan, or you can buy an orphan, and those who do not get selected are going to be surgically modified into monsters.
Well, of course. They'd never miss this. Who's it, Mrs. Brooks? Who's going away? Tell us. This week, Dr. White here has selected our very own Samuel Lee. Now, before he goes, let's all give Sam one last goodbye, shall we? With me. 1, 2, 3. Goodbye, Sam!
You want the scare factor inside the lore or outside the chase sequences and jump scare? There you go. The scary factor is that they aren't dead. This isn't paranormal. They are surgically modified and configured and changed and broken apart and put back together to be mascots for their stupid little games. Would paranormal be scarier? I don't think so. I think there's something so tragic about taking a literal child, developing them, growing them, and making them into a toy, hurting them. They're oozing in pain post-surgery, and you're like, alright, go entertain the kids. Go on, it's your time. And if there's any hope that you can find a family before that happens, well, you better hope you're not in the raffle.
Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Hartman. Come on in. Please, have a seat. How was your ride down?
It was, nothing like we were expecting. Mr. Ludwig's speech was, well, it just confirms for us that you're the orphanage we want to go through.
It's a truly magical place. I felt right at home from the second I entered.
Why doesn't nobody talk about
You
Stella?
open that door the first time and you just know. You're never going to leave. Kind of like finding a home as a child and always thinking of it when you want to feel comforted. I understand you want to give Jeremy that home? Yes, and we would like to adopt. Amazing. You'll be perfect for... Oh. What? Well, it appears there's been some complications. Complications? Oh, what kind of complications? I don't know. The form says testing. What does that mean? Tell us, what does that mean?
Miss Graper, we deserve a better explanation than that. Don't you think?
You're in charge of all this! How could you not know?
And why are we only finding out about this now?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Hey, you know what? Maybe you're not even part of Playtime Co. Maybe you got a toy and brought it home to your nice, safe family. Hopefully it's not defective.
She'll be okay. Well, pardon me if I'm not comforted by that. Just bring my little girl back to me.
I also think it's wildly impressive that Poppy Playtime's lore is both cohesive and unnoticeable. Like, check this out.
So, Stella, what made you want to work at the Playtime Co. factory?
Stella. Okay, we've met Stella. She was in the tapes last time she became big.
Welcome to the game station. I'm Stella, and we've got 3 super duper fun games to play.
Stella! This is Stella's office. Very important office. Whereas most indie horror games in a franchise kinda don't pay attention to things as Chapter comes out, let alone as Entry comes out, Poppy Playtime comes out every couple years with a new chapter, and when you play it, you're like, oh, this is a good addition to the story that I, the main character, am going around noticing, without even noticing the story that you would find out if you played it back to back to back, or listened to the ARG, which is completely optional. The difference between this lore and another game's lore is that you don't have to read book by book by book, watch movie, game to find out 3 different lores to get the same story. In this game, watch a tape. Oh, that's interesting. Look at a wall. Huh, that connects to this. And that's the story. It connects like that. It's cohesive across 3 games. I know the story. And there's no problem to not being in the know when it comes to lore. There is something unique and actually scary about a lore that nobody knows, and you make it your own. But at the end of the day, that does cause arguments. That causes problems. And I bet you're typing a comment right now to tell me why I'm wrong about the Poppy Playtime lore, when everything here is like right there. And that's really good. Also, check this parallel out.
The last of the smiling critters.
I also thoroughly enjoy that Mob posted this on their Instagram, and then the next day they posted this. That's really smart. Great marketing and a great way to tease a trailer, as well as a game. You know, I said a lot earlier about simplicity in indie horror, so I'm gonna say it up front. The simplicity and creativity in Chapter 1 is absolutely superb. From the moment you see Poppy and the moment you see Huggy, you're kind of left with this uneasy feeling, and you're kind of just like, ugh. Ugh, what? Why is this the way it is? Like, why am I uncomfortable? Is this funny? Is this goofy? Why do I feel every bit horrible that I do right now? Even all this time later, I'm still left questioning things about Chapter 1. The biggest 100% being, what is this door? What is it open? Am I meant to know? I also love the puzzles in Chapter 1. They're not stupid hard, and they're not stupid easy either. They're kind of brain turners. Once you know them, but you're kind of left going, ah, when you finish them, and I love that. I also adore that Huggy is always watching from the moment you turn the power on. Like, everywhere you go, he is watching where you are, kind of leaving you uncertain, and it's very easy to miss when you're playing it for the first time. When you play it again, you're like, oh, what is he doing? Sometimes you catch it, sometimes you don't. The concept of the grab pack is actually genius to me. I think it works so well in this game, and I'm glad that it solidifies how the gameplay works in both its mechanics and its puzzles. Like, genuinely, you're 1 minute sitting there open a door, and then the next minute, you're fighting for your life. Speaking of fighting for your life, the Huggy chase is why this game is even around to this day. The reason why Chapter 1 works so well is because the tension of being followed around and watched by Mr. is so unnerving, because he's always there, like I said, even if you don't know it. So when he's over there getting ready to jump you and tear your bones out, does Huggy have bones? It's weird. And then you get in the vents, and he starts running for you. And yeah, it's effective. I'm gonna monologue. Dude, this chase sequence... Here, listen. It's so ridiculously unnerving, and it's tense, it's suspenseful. Your heart starts racing because you're like, oh, it's ride or die now. I better run, figure this out because he's on my tail. And yeah, he's on your tail. I've been stating for about 2 years now, especially replaying this chapter, especially when they remastered it for PlayStation 5, I said, yeah, by the way, when they're done with this game and Poppy Playtime is out completely and they release the collection of the entire 17-hour game after whatever chapter, I say they're going to make a VR game. Because we got the movie coming out, and a VR game would legit be perfect in this world. You have 2 hands, 2 controllers, a visor to look around. It's a perfect idea, and you get to see these things in VR. The last thing I also want to bring up for Chapter 1 is it doesn't overstay its welcome. You can tell Mob was a very small company when they made this chapter, and yeah, you could see it in the credits. Like, this team put together something so impactful and so innovative in a game that was 30 minutes. Has it been done before? Yeah. But Poppy Playtime is a juggernaut of a game now, and like it or not, you can't deny that. It's also very, very cool that the prototype was in Chapter 1 when they probably had no idea Chapter 1 was going to do so well, and they probably had Chapter 2 planned, but I don't think they thought it'd be as big as it is.
In relation, experiment 100.
There's the prototype right there.
Prototype. Coordination and cooperation is evidently within his skill set, as well as the skill set of all other experiments of his type. Though still,
Oh, you mean, I meant
these
the
events
creation of
have
the
no doubt
prototype.
relation to him. His absence was a flaw in the scientific process, which should have under no circumstances been left unaccounted for. That's why I'm making this log, so that the same mistake won't be made twice. Any future experiments will need to be contained and disposed of in a secure location. I'm not worried about myself. One breakthrough and I'll be back. We must forge onwards in the name of science, whether those who are beneath us understand it or not. End of...
This very clip you're watching was recorded at 1:22 in the morning. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you got this far in the video, and be sure to comment down below, by the way, who your favorite Poppy Playtime character is. Make sure to do all those things. I worked hard! I genuinely like how short this chapter is, though. I have no problem with how long the other ones are, and I actually prefer the longer ones, but for this being the first chapter of the game, it being below an hour is awesome. It may take people who play for the first time an hour, I doubt that, but being able to just come in, witness the horror, and leave is so nice, and it's so refreshing, dude. We needed this game. Like it or hate it, the horror community needed a game like this to just come in, do something scary, do something new. Say what you will about that, but it was good. I genuinely love Chapter 1, and Chapter 2 is only better. Chapter 2, Electric Boogaloo, Fly in a Web. A legit, only greater improvement on Chapter 1 in many ways. For starters, this time you aren't being chased by a Huggy Wuggy, this time you're going to be touched by a mommy. Chapter 2 immediately throws you in where you left off, and without Poppy. Poppy, for some reason, skedaddled and pushed an entire bookshelf, and now you gotta go find her. As you go down the hallway of Miss Potential, you do find Elliot Ludwig's office, and this does make me question who we are in this franchise. I don't think that's ever been specified. I know we're a worker, and I know that they have a vendetta against me, so am I a scientist? Am I part of the reason why this happened? Am I Elliot Ludwig? Am I Leif Pierre? Am I Stella Graber? I do like that immediately off the bat in this chapter as well. You do find pamphlets, pieces of paper, golden statues. There's a lot more collectibles in Chapter 2 out of all of the chapters because they really wanted you to find stuff and really collect stuff to make the game feel a lot more special. And a lot of those pamphlets you find are about the Bigger Bodies Project, and a lot of the tapes you watch in this chapter do go into a lot more detail about some of the workers at Playtime Co. I do love that Mob also makes us feel a level of mistrust when it comes to this game, because after Chapter 1 of that chase, you're kind of walking around this area like, alright, what's going to come out of what corner and attack me? What's going to, run at me that I have to run away from in some sort of crawl space? And just like Chapter 1, they're everywhere. As soon as you think you're safe and you're like, oh, well, there goes Poppy, I guess we'll find out about that later. The moment you shoot your little hand, Mommy shows up and you're like, oh, this is real. And she gets a little too close for comfort and starts dropping exposition on you before you play her games. As I'm doing this voiceover and yammering about Chapter 2, I'm looking at Mommy's design. She's not a spider. She's like a Stretch Armstrong character, right? How does she shoot webs? What is that? To give this game its roses, I gotta talk about one little gripe I have, and it's about these little Playtime Co. posters and murals. I don't like, and I understand why, because they didn't have things designed ahead of time and such, but in a couple years when this game comes out fully, right, and you could buy Poppy Playtime, the collection, the main game, the full shebang, there's only a select amount of characters on these murals that were only shown in the chapters they're in. So when you look at this mural in Chapter 2, you don't see Boxy Boo or the Smiling Critters or even like Pianosaurus. So I'm like, all these popular toys are very popular in their selected areas. Which I know why they do that. It's very nitpicky for me to say that, but I just want to make a point about that. Like, you would expect to see Catnap or Boxy Boo in one of these murals. After also checking out the devil from the Bible, you enter the game station. The game station is really cool in terms of the story because this is where people who went to the factory for tours actually had their fun. They would go and play these games with these toys, and then they would go out and be like, Mommy, I want merchandise. And the mom would be like, okay, sure, it's not going to kill you. Well, but I do like how in this story, Chapter 1 is sort of this is where workers were, and this is where workers kind of did their thing. You're going through vents and warehouses and shelving units to find stuff. And in Chapter 2, you're seeing where the actual factory tours took place. And in Chapter 3, you're kind of uncovering the actual hell within Playtime Co., because you got Playcare and you got the orphanage. That is actually talked about throughout every game. There are signs in Chapter 1 talking about the orphanage. And right after, you get to go down to a warehouse again and see how to make the green hand, which was there the whole time for workers who needed it. And if you don't believe me, here's a how-to video to find out how to use the green hand for conducting electricity. You know, all that. And then we enter Music Memory, which is one of the many fun aspects of Chapter 2, and it kind of does tease and get you prepared for Project Playtime, God rest its soul. But I do love how every time I play Chapter 2, I stop and I question myself, this was for kids? Like, kids would step on this platform and stress themselves out. I know it was for fun to be like, oh, make sure to keep Bunzo away. No, for me, it's essentially you're throwing a 10-year-old into a 9-to-5. Like, it's so stressful and so tense, but it's so much fun, and I love doing it.
It broke. That's no fun.
What is fun, although, is the fact that what I actually genuinely enjoy about Chapter 2, and I'll go into it a bit with Chapter 3, is this game isn't full of fetch quests, which in a lot of modern Mascot horror, that's kind of a big thing. I am so sick of a character who needs me to do something, tells me to go off on an adventure and encounter some evil and some crazy, horrible thing, and then I come back and I deliver what they want me to grab, and they go, that's not enough. Go do it again. There have been games I've played on this channel where I've done that dozens of times, and that 1,000,000% ruins the movement of a game for me. I hate fetch quests in horror games. Many days later, I mean fetch quests akin to like Bendy Chapter 3 or Security Breach, where it doesn't feel like you're actually amounting to what you're doing, but Poppy Playtime kind of disguises their fetch quests. That's kind of what I meant. When a game gets annoying, it loses its fear factor. I've played dozens of games on this channel, and I have sat there and have grown annoyed with a lot of games, and when I get annoyed, I start to not get scared. But with this franchise, I feel like you're always left at the edge of your seat waiting for something to happen solely because you expect things to happen, and once you least expect it, they happen, which is good horror, and I'm sorry for those who don't feel that way about this, but that's genuinely how I feel. With statues, I feel a sense of stress. Whenever I turn around and I see this thing coming for me, I'm like, oh, I'm dead, this is it, it's over, it's done, when in reality, I made it. Outside of the mini-games you get to play as well that introduce new characters like Bunzo, PJ, and I guess the mini Huggies, the marketable Huggies, if you will, the puzzles in this chapter are great. I really like the idea that the puzzles in Poppy Playtime are kind of just brain busters. You're just sitting there like, oh, I get it. And then when you do it, you're like, oh, I'm a genius. I kind of love that feeling when I do something in a horror game and it actually feels worthwhile and I actually feel like I did something with it. Instead of, okay, I did it! Great job! Was that worth it? No? Too bad. That's kind of how a lot of these other games feel for me, and I really do like the puzzles in Poppy Playtime.
Look at that, guys. Easy as pie.
Even the end fight in Chapter 2 is very different from Chapter 1. Yes, you get your traditional chase sequence and whatnot, but this time, it's through your own effort. It's through your own mishap. Like, hey, to mommy, you, like, sort of cheated in statues. You didn't get killed by PJ. So now she's going to treat you as if you're a cheater, but she's going to give you a chance to run on your own. Then she's going to come find you, so you get to do more puzzles in the middle of this chase sequence, and then it becomes an actual chase in the end, just like the first game. Whereas other games would have the puzzles allow them to kill you in the middle, therefore you fail, you fumble, you gotta do it all over again. This game doesn't do that. It gives you time in between each chase and each puzzle to make sure you hit a checkpoint, you hit where you need to be. And once you get to the end, you can do what you've always wanted to do. Slaughter them!
Bye, Mommy. It's what you deserve. You deserve it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is what you get. I'm sorry. You look. We can be civil. See, look, you're okay. You're okay. We can be civil. I can. Ugh. That was a little good. What are you made of?
And after a cryptic line of Poppy being like, "Good, you murdered her. Now I plan go to the train so you may leave." Then Poppy kills you. But in reality, she puts you on the path to play care. And then we wait 3 years for the next chapter to come out. Chapter 2 really gives fans and players of the game their thanks, and there's a lot of references to YouTubers off their birthdays or cameos or even just little things that maybe people realize and say, hey, that was for me. And that's just their way of saying thanks. Thanks for making our game big. Thanks for making us an actual company. We have a movie coming out soon, and Chapter 2 really just amplifies Chapter 1 and makes it a different game, but somehow the same story. Each chapter is darker and more grim, but all the story is still there. Where I said that Chapter 1 was the foundation that made Poppy Playtime where it is today, and Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 only made it more fun and improved on it, Chapter 3 has the uttermost aura in the entire franchise. Not only did Chapter 3 cause the biggest break in the franchise of a couple of years, I think I was in high school when the first trailer came out, but the sheer mystery of this chapter was immense and also very intriguing and interesting. There was a time where, I kid you not, viewers, people thought Catnap was a bird. As the Smiling Critters were introduced day by day closer to the release, Catnap was still a mystery. He was still an intrigue. The final reveal of Catnap solidified that this chapter would be a million times different than the other two, and it was true. When I look back at all the chapters, I really can't find anything that I despise. It's normally just nitpicky stuff. The most I would nitpick about these chapters is I wish some of the other characters were shown more. There's a lot of stuff, like Braun. I really want Braun in Poppy Playtime as a bigger body, as at least a cameo, or at least some voice line, because I don't think we have nothing to Braun. Hey, Mob, I'm your guy. But with Chapter 3, my biggest nitpicks while I was getting this footage from the videos I posted on this very channel, I was not a fan of the Miss Delight sequence going in, as well as the Catnap boss fight. Those are the two things in this chapter that I do not care for. When replaying, it was a lot easier than when the chapter initially came out. The Catnap boss fight was ridiculously hard when I first played it, and there definitely seemed to be a lot of changes between Miss Delight and Catnap's boss fight. So it was a lot more fun, and I had less gripes about it, which was really nice. And again, those are the only two, like, nitpicks I have, is I thought initially when I first played this that the catnap boss fight was too hard, and I hated the stress of Mist of Light, which, again, two huge compliments. You made a boss fight that was challenging, and you made an actual area that was terrifying and stressful and tense. Good on you, Mob, for that. But not getting too ahead of ourselves. When going into this chapter, I genuinely wanted horror. Chapter 1 has the chase that I've brought up multiple times. Chapter 2 has the intrigue, the lore, the kind of rebranding of the franchise and the, hey, we're bigger, we're badder. Chapter 3 is, oh, we're legit. We're a force not to be reckoned with. We're scary, and we're going to make you feel scared. We're going to make you feel tense the entire way through. The sense of ambition is also very nice in this chapter. You can feel that Mob wanted to put this out, and you can feel the love and the passion and the care they had when making this chapter. This chapter is ambitious. It's huge, and there was so much thought and care and effort and a real sense of thought put in behind the team, and you could tell that they were utterly impressed with this when they made it, because Chapter 3 is different. And when you compare Chapter 3 to 2 and 1, it's a completely different game. Same concept, same premise, same mechanics, but tonally, it is so shot, and it is so just different. The fear factor in this chapter is also so inspiring. I genuinely love that as each one of these chapters go on, they get darker and darker and scarier and scarier, and it sounds like the same thing is happening with Chapter 4. Finishing this chapter burnt me out when I first played it, and I love that. I love when a game takes so much out of me, whether from stress, fear, emotion, anything, that when I'm finished, I'm just like, done for the rest of the day. And I love that this chapter did that for me. The sense of scale is also amplified to like 1,000,000 in this chapter. In chapters 1 and 2, you're like, oh yeah, this is a big factory and whatnot. In chapter 3, you're like, no, this is a labyrinth. This is a place where they kept people, experimented on people. We haven't even seen the prison, the labs, anything of the sort. We've only seen where people actually work and people toured. Like, the train crash was leading to Playcare, where the orphanage is. We still have barely touched how large Playtime Co. is, and I think that's actually crazy. I also love that in this chapter, my gripe was fixed. Characters that we've been introduced to before, as well as characters we haven't met yet, are actually shown throughout all these stations, which, thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. Even though we don't encounter Kickin' Chicken or Boxy Boo, their presence is still known. Their cutouts are everywhere, there's murals of them, and yeah, they are popular characters to this world, just not encountered for us. I love that. I hope to see more of that in Chapter 4, which I doubt it, because we're going to be in, like, the basement area. Going into completely, I want to talk about Playcare, and how Playcare feels unsafe, unsure, uncertain. It feels like a prison. Ironic, because there's one right under it. I was just watching Daco react to the trailer of this, and he made a good point, and he said, dude, they're probably using the gas to knock kids out and then experiment on them. Which is terrifying and terrible. Like, it's worse. I'm gonna say it, it's worse than William Afton. Like, William did some heinous things. No doubt about it. But, like I stated before, they gotta live with this. Their whole life is now your catnap, you know? Like, it's so heartbreaking. When you are slowly gliding into Playcare, and there's this speech that tells you how beautiful it is, how wonderful it is, how it's a kid's dream come true, and it's like, these are orphans. These are kids who wake up with no parents and go day by day hoping to find a home, and their home has a painted sky. They don't get to see sunlight, it's painted for them, and there's a giant spotlight looming over them. And I know you may be thinking, bro, it's not that deep, but it's their own little Monopoly world. It's fake. It's artificial. People are raised in this weird captivity of maybe one day I'll have a life and a world that is actually real. But no, your life is owned by Playtime Co. And I know what you're thinking, bro, it's not that deep. It is. It's actually horrifying and sad and kind of gloomy. Also, while I'm here, I'll note that the puzzles are even more creative and even more imaginative, and they have new grab pack hands and new logic to how they work because they're longer now. That's really cool. They didn't have to do that. They could have just stuck the same old puzzles on us, but they add a new twist, and I think that's really neat. And Home Sweet Home. What an amazing segment. This whole segment was why Chapter 3 was created, and I love every moment of it. The fact that Catnap is actually in the corner watching you, like he's there, and the closer you get, he disappears from the game's files, and he's not there anymore. But this labyrinth that is ever-changing and is just leading you in circles as he stares at you. It's oh so genius, and then it just leads nowhere until it takes you where you need to go. Ironically, I joked about this in my series. You're probably just running in circles due to this hallucination gas, but Catnap is just playing with you. You're literally playing cat and mouse right now, and it's amazing. I love it. And as this goes on, you're learning more about the workers and the CEO and how terrible they are and how these people just suffered for their own enjoyment. And all for this labyrinth to end with just a VHS tape to mock you and say, oh, your own guilt led you back to Playtime Co. Oh, you perfect being you came back because you're guilty. That makes it all better. We're made of plastic now. Meat, bones, plastic, fur, we're fake. We're artificial. We're not human anymore. And you think coming back on a guilty conscience makes you okay? That's so compelling and cool. I don't even know who we're playing as, but it's still cool. And the fact that you're just running from point A to point C while Catnap is watching you is so fun, because you think he's going to attack you, when he really doesn't. He's just watching you do your thing, and he doesn't really even care.
Whoa!
After Home Sweet Home and an attempted Huggy reveal, they tell you, hey, we're not the enemies here. We're actually on your side. And even though you murdered all these people, that's kind of what we want you to do. So can we keep doing that? Can you keep murdering for us? Is that cool? Anyway, fast forward, and you do get a little idea of what the prototype is going to look like, and I highly hope and pray that for Chapter 4 we actually see what this thing looks like, because they've been building it up the entire time, and I just want to know what it looks like. I'm very impatient. I will say, as much as I love shooting the smiling critters in the face, I do wish Catnap was walking around this area as we thought he was going to be. They kind of showed that to us in the trailer. But I'm not against it, because the Dog Day chase is very good, very impactful, and I actually enjoy all of it. It's tense, scary, and it throws you for a loop the whole time, which kudos to them for doing that. But yeah, I really, really appreciate the Dog Day chase as well as the playhouse as a whole, and I also genuinely appreciate the offices and the counselors. You see actual genuine lore of how many people were really in charge of this place and how sickening they were. Even if there's some redemption with Stella where she's like, I don't know, this is kind of terrible. Doesn't say that, but her acting is phenomenal, and she does kind of show it.
A better explanation than that, don't you think?
You're in charge of all this. How could you not know?
And why are we only finding out about this now?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Then we move on to actual nightmare fuel and learning about the prototype, which is really cool. Also, we get to see them get acquainted. But now we must get serious and talk about the real takeaway from this. The Hour of Joy. Akin to another franchise, The Hour of Joy is this franchise's supposed Bite of 83, the Sprinlock scene. Its big moment. The moment where you sit and ask yourself, why? What? How? What? Why? The moment that shocks you, kinda. I mean, all these things really like to kill to begin with. But we come to realize that the toys bow to the prototype, and they wiped out Playtime Co., and everyone you've ever known is dead and eaten. They've been gnawing on them for a couple of years. The actual horror and the sense of levity it adds to this franchise, because as I said, yeah, it's no different from like the Bite of 83 or the Sprinlock scene, but this is the one moment in the game I want to see adapted into the movie. The moment where all of these tortured kids, now grown, turned their backs to the company that harmed them and said, no, we're going to take it and we're going to live on in it, trapped in this horrible factory. It's simple, but effective. All it is an hour in time where all the toys had a revolution and they destroyed everything. It's simple, yet so effective, and I really appreciate that. The hour of joy made everything kind of make sense. Like, hey, why do these toys hate workers so much? Why is there so much anger between Mommy and the player? Why is Poppy so mistrusting? There are still a lot of questions to be answered, but the hour of joy does give a sense of, oh, that's what happened. As Poppy finishes her monologue and she prepares us for war, Kissy lowers us into the uncertain abyss as we're about to go on with Poppy, before a cliffhanger happens and they say, see you soon for chapter 4, you know, the huge. But, still a really great end to the chapter. Is Poppy Playtime perfect? No. Neither is FNAF. Neither is Bendy. Neither is Hello Neighbor, Garten of Ban, whatever you want to say. I made this video because I love this franchise. I deeply care about it, and I really love the characters, the creativity, and everything that goes into it. It's full of fun, it's full of whimsy, it's full of horror. It feels authentic, and it feels genuine. I thank the community for keeping this game strong in between chapters, and I thank Mob for giving us banner after banner every chapter. Please share this video. It took a long time to make, and feel free to hit that subscribe button. I will be playing Chapter 4, and I will continue to forever support Poppy Playtime as chapters come out, and I'm so excited for the movie, and I'll even bring you news about that. Comment down below, who's your favorite Poppy Playtime character? Thank you. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Mob, for everything you do. I love your franchise. I love this game, and I really hope this video does well, because I did put a lot of time into it. I put a lot of effort on it. It's not a perfect video, but I'm not perfect. I'm one man doing all this myself. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all next time.